Hey guys, so we're actually going backwards and we are going to go into lesson, oh I forgot, let me put this, math 6, lesson 8.1, and we're going to talk about function tables, which is interesting because I've been showing you function tables for quite a while now. I forget to call them things, I just call them a table of values, right? So let's talk about what is it. So we got vocab because, we're at the beginning of a new chapter. So we're going to talk about what do I mean by a function. And actually, it's kind of a formal word for something we've already done. So it's a relation that pairs exactly one output value, and I'm going to say this kind of like an answer, to one input value. It's kind of like the number you substitute in. So, number you substitute in. Okay? Now, what are we substituting it into? Well, that guy's called a function rule. So, function rule, it describes how the input and output relate to each other. So how the input value relates to the output value. So in other words, it's like an equation. It's what tells you to do. Okay? All right, and then we use our function table. Can you hear my neighbor Dougie bark? Yeah. Function table is a way to organize the input and output values. Actually all three of them. Organize the input and let's do it in order. The input value, the function rule, what are you going to do to that input number, and the output value. Okay? Now, input, let's talk about those two guys. So input, a value that goes into a function rule. Now, when you think about it, function rule, this is like choosing an x value. We did that, back in chapter 6, when we were graphing. We chose the x's, we put them into an equation, we got the y's, and we graphed the ordered pairs. So, because we get to choose these are called the independent variable, because everybody can choose what they want for x. Now, based on what you choose for x, then you have actually an exactly one answer that can come out, and that's the guy that's called output. So output is a value that you calculate from the rule and input value. because he's the result of using the input value, he's called the dependent value or variable. So that basically would be like the y, the outcome, okay? So we've talked about outcome before, and output are the same. So again, the answer you get for the output depends upon what you put in, okay? So we're going to do some graphing tables. I'm going to go to my next screen. And we're going to be giving an output. We're going to be coming up with a rule, and then we're going to calculate the output for each of it. So sometimes we're going to have to figure out the output rule. I think actually for all of them we're going to be told it. Yeah, that makes it even easier, okay? And so let's say we have a table of values. So the directions are going to ask us to find the output, or find the missing value. Oops, sorry. Find the missing values. Okay, find the missing values. So we're going to do a couple, and then we're going to get a little bit weird, where we're going to calculate, we're going to be given the input, and then I'm going to show you, well, what if they give us the output? All right, so let's do 2 of these. So the table looks like this: input, and then X, and then we have another column with the rule. So there's your function rule. Actually, I'm going to make that a little bigger, because that's actually where the work is going to go. And then we're going to have the output. What was the answer? Now, some people would actually take and make a 4th column, the input-output, so that we can graph. And so we'll actually do that in one of our examples. Okay, so the input would be like 4, 7, 10. So now what you're going to do is you're going to substitute in 4 for X, which is our input value, and then calculate the output value, okay? So we get 4, and then the rest is what was in the inequality, or the equation. Oh, not minus X, hello, that was X. Minus 4, and that answer is 0, so we put that in the output. So when I put in 4, I get out 0. So if I graph that, it would be the point for 0. Next, we're going to try 7. We get 7 minus 4, that equals 3. So that goes in the output. So when I put in 3 into the rule, I get out. When I put in 7, I get out 3. Okay. My mouth is not working. All right, when I put in 10 into the rule, 10 take away 4 equals 6. So there's my output. So these are my output values, okay? And sometimes that's all they're going to ask you to do. All right, let's do one more like this, and then we're going to turn the tables. So we have input is X. Our rule is just going to be 3X. So notice there isn't a Y, there isn't an equals, it's just 3X. It's kind of simple. And output is going to be our Y value. I'm going to put it on this. I'm going to put it back on this one too. Okay. So I'm going to tell you to try 0, 2, and 5. So we're going to do 3 times 0, and that's going to equal 0. So when I put in 0, I get out 0. And then I'm going to try 3 times 2, and that's going to give me 6. So when I put in 2, I get out 6. And then I'm going to try 5. And I get 3 times 5 is 15. So when I put in 5, I get out 15. So these would be the 3 outputs that match the inputs. All right, so let's go and try something else. So I'm going to give you a little bit of wording here. So if you are given the output values and must calculate the inverse, or to the input values, you will work backwards. So that's the technique that we use. This one's a little bit more challenging. In other words, you're going to have to use inverse operations. Okay, so on example number 3, directions are going to say find the missing input values. So on this one, we're going to be given input is x, and then we're going to have the rule is 2x minus 1. Oops, I'm going to give myself more room. And then we have the output, which is like our y value. And those are the values that they're going to give us. Let's do 135. Okay? So, here's what we need to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take our output. And we're going to do the operations we see in the opposite order they appear. So in other words, we're going to add 1, and then we're going to divide by 2. Okay, so that's the order. We're going to do inverse operations. So the inverse of subtracting 1 is adding 1. Okay, so that's going to give us an answer of 1. And then the inverse of, that gives me 2, my brain, hello. And the inverse of multiplying by 2 is going to be dividing by 2. Okay, and so that gives us the answer of 1. That 1 is going to go over here. So then we can test it. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 take away 1 is 1. So I test it back in to make sure that it works. So I'm doing inverse operations. So I'm going to write it underneath here. So when I have 2x minus 1, with the output, I add 1, and then I divide by 2. Okay? All right, so let's try another one. So we start with our 3, and the inverse of subtracting 1 is adding 1. That's going to take me to 4. And then the inverse of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. Oops, sorry, I forgot to write my answer 4. And that equals 2. So that goes to my input. Actually, I'm gonna highlight these in red, just so they stand out. Okay, and then I can test it. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 take away 1 is 3. That's what I started with, so that I did it right. Okay, I've got one more. I'm going to start with 5. The inverse of subtracting 1 is adding 1. Which equals 6. And then the inverse of multiplying by 2 would be dividing by 2. And that equals 3. So we're going to put 3 in the input column. So I can test it. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 take away 1 is 5. It works. So these are actually your answers, I should say. Okay. Well, what if they want to go to the next level and they want you to graph? Okay. So, and the ones that want you to graph give you this whole big, huge, long story, but then they tell you everything you need. They tell you what is the X. They tell you what numbers to put in for X, your input. They tell you the rule, and you just have to calculate the output. So I'm going to change. Actually, I'm going to go to the next screen so we can do a clean job of it. So on these, we're going to complete the function table, then graph. So blissfully, they're going to go back to giving us the input, and then we have to calculate the output, so it's a little easier. So let's say we have this person bought jelly beans. This is from our book, and it says it costs $3 per pound, and a candy dish costs $2, and then they give us the function rule. So they say pounds. So how many pounds of candy is this kid going to buy? Okay, so X is the number of pounds, so it tells us all this information. It can be used to find the total cost of X pounds. So that's going to be the N is the cost, which will be our Y. And then we have our rule, which is the 3X plus 2. Okay, and then it's going to be the cost, which is money, of course. And then we have, that's going to be our Y value. So I'm going to tack on one more column. I'm going to take what I put in, what I get out, and I'm going to make an ordered pair of it. Now it says, table shows the cost of buying 2, 3, and 4 pounds of jelly beans. Oh, makes me think of the Jelly Belly factory. All right, so here we go. So we're going to substitute X with 2. So we get 3 times 2 is 6, and then 6 plus 2 is 8. I'm going to just give it a different color. So then I'm going to pair those guys up, and I'm going to have 2 and 8. Okay, let's try 3. So we have the rule says 3 times the X value, and in this case it's a 3, and then we're going to add a 2 to that. So we get 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 plus 2 is equal to 11. So when I pair those two up, in went 3, out came 11. So X in front, Y in back. Then the last one, we start with, on this one, 4 pounds. Write out the rest of the rule. And then 3 times 4 is 12, and 12 plus 2 is 14. So I'm going to graph 4 and 14. All right, so this is when I'm going to bring in my graph paper. I think it's this one. Yeah, I like this one. And we're going to, we need to go across to 2, and I need to go up to 14. Now, I can count by 2s. I think that would probably be easy. So let me see. So if this is 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, and that would be the 0, would be right there in the corner. And then here, get my arrow caps, X and Y, and then maybe I'll count, yeah, I'll just count by 1s. Now I'm going to give myself a little bit more space. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to label what each thing means, okay? So this is going to be the number of pounds, okay, the number of pounds, and then the other side is going to be total cost. And I'm going to put in parentheses that it's going to be in dollars. I'm going to take my 3 points and I'm going to graph them. 2 paired up with 8. And then 3 paired up with 11, which is halfway between 10 and 12. And then 4 paired up with 14. Okay? And we're not going to connect the points. I'm going to just draw it. Don't connect the points. So a little bit of review back in the chapter when we were graphing. Okay? All right, there you go. We'll talk about this in class. Bye now.